founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Friday, April 24th, 2020, and we are live. So everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms, your social media pages, invite your friends to tune in. So I wanted to deal with some things that have happened the past couple of days, deal with an update, what's going on with coronavirus, deal with the unemployment numbers that came out on Thursday, April 23rd. 4.4 million more Americans filed for unemployment. Also want to deal with the $484 billion bill that Congress passed tied to this would be the really the fourth coronavirus bill. $484 billion to fund small businesses, hospitals, and for testing, $60 billion set aside basically for minorities, et cetera, for small businesses. So we're going to talk about that. And then also Donald Trump this week also put a pause on immigration for 60 days, okay? And this is a red herring. He's trying to find a scapegoat for his mishandling of the coronavirus crisis, but also mishandling of the economy. Because for all practical purposes, immigration was already shut down, one. Two, there are a lot of exceptions to this immigration pausing or immigration ban for 60 days. I want to talk some about this. And what he's trying to do is use immigrants as a scapegoat, because what he said was when the economy comes back up and businesses start bringing people back, he wants to protect these jobs for Americans, right? We've seen this before. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand history, so we don't know this, okay? We saw this in 1931 during the Great Depression with President Herbert Hoover. Because Herbert Hoover, during the Great Depression, starting in the early 1930s, Herbert Hoover, and then continues into the Franklin Roosevelt administration, 1.8 million Mexican Americans were deported from the US back to Mexico during the Depression. 60% of them were born here and were here legally. President Herbert Hoover said that that the Mexicans were taking jobs away from Americans, specifically white people. And President Herbert Hoover had a campaign called American Jobs for Real Americans. This is the same thing Donald Trump is doing. It didn't work back then. It's not going to work now. Okay. If you understand history, you understand this game Trump is playing. He's lying. So we're going to deal with all of this. And I'm going to provide you with a number of different sources. Proper documentation ends all conversations. So you don't have to believe a word that I say. Go research this for yourself. How's everybody doing on YouTube? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms, okay? Because this is going to be a real history lesson. Also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay. So, and then also we saw this idiot at the White House coronavirus press conference on Thursday, Donald Trump, suggesting that you could somehow inject disinfectant into the human body to kill coronavirus, inject Lysol, something like that. The company that makes Lysol has put out a statement saying under no circumstances should Lysol be ingested. And then he said that he suggested that you can use ultraviolet rays on the body to kill coronavirus somehow. Use ultraviolet rays on the body. So he's getting worse day by day. This is an exemplified elections have consequences. Everybody's just sitting back looking at him. Even Republicans looking at him like, you simple Simon ass. They can't even believe this. Okay, so This is what we're dealing with. He's getting worse day by day. He's under tremendous pressure. We see that the U.S. has reached a milestone of 50,000 deaths related to a coronavirus as well. And so a lot of people are looking at this and they're holding Trump responsible, as they should. All right, so let's look at I want to look at first an article from Washington Post. Washington Post, I read this when it came out on Thursday. Washington Post had a really good article. 4.4 million Americans sought jobless benefits last week as economic pain continued across the United States. 4.4 million Americans sought jobless benefits last week as economic pain continued across the United States. Okay, so I'm going to give you the name of a number of articles, and we'll post the links here on the thread of the broadcast when we're done. I want you to go read this information, okay? All right, so the White House and Congress have tried to arrest the downturn, but the coronavirus pandemic keeps pushing Americans out of the labor force, right? Now, when you go study President Herbert Hoover, who ran for president, he was a Republican, ran for president in 1928. He served one term. This was before presidents were limited to 2 terms, okay? He served one term. It was his mishandling of the Great Depression that cost him the election, and President Roosevelt became president, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So more than 4.4 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, according to the Labor Department, a signal the tidal wave of job losses continues to grow during the coronavirus pandemic. It's the 5th straight week that job losses were measured in the millions, the 5th straight week that job losses were measured in the millions. From March 15th to April 18th, 26.5 million people have probably been laid off or furloughed. The number of jobs lost is in that brief span effectively erased all jobs created after the 2008 financial crisis. Jobless figures on this scale have not been seen since the Great Depression. Now let's pause right here for a minute. This idiot was supposed to be the big businessman. He was supposed to make America great again. He was supposed to bring back manufacturing. He was supposed to take America to places you've never seen before. Well, he's doing that. We ain't never seen no bull. We never seen no stuff like this before. Okay, but so 2010, the recovery starts under President Obama. You had 22 million jobs basically created going back to 2010. In 5 weeks, this idiot has wiped out all the job recovery, actually going back to 2008. The number of jobs lost in that brief span, in 5 weeks, the number of jobs lost in that brief span effectively erased all jobs created after the 2008 financial crisis. So going back to 2010, if you watch the broadcast I did last week, Thursday, when the job numbers came out in 6.6 million people, or the it was 5 million last week, 5 million the previous week, 5 million filed for unemployment. We talked about this, okay? So let's see, let's go back to the article came out April 16th, 2020 from Washington Post. U.S. now has 22 million unemployed, wiping out a decade of job gains. This is the article from Washington Post, April 16th, 2020. And it says the United States has not seen this level of job loss since the Great Depression, and the government is struggling to respond fast enough to the deadly coronavirus health crisis and the widespread economic pain it triggered. It said it's a staggering loss of jobs that has wiped out a decade of employment gains and pushed families to line up at food banks as they await government help. Now, this is the article from April 16th, okay, when that week, I think it was 5 million who applied for unemployment. So, and they talk about how they go back to 2010 with the recovery in 2010. The eye-popping job losses in the past month have erased virtually all of the 22 1.8 million jobs gained since 2010 as the nation rebounded from the Great Recession. Okay, so that's on page 2 of this article. So this is the one from the Washington Post, April 16th, 2020. U.S. now has 22 million unemployed, wiping out a decade of job gains. This is the one from last week when unemployment numbers came out last week, Thursday. Okay, this is the one from Thursday, April 23rd, 2020. 4.4 million Americans sought jobless benefits last week as economic pain continues across the United States. So what's happening is that all of the job gains, 22 million jobs created since 2010, starting under President Barack Obama. Most of those jobs created under President Barack Obama. Nobody wants to talk about this. Very few people want to talk about this. Donald Trump doesn't want to give him any credit. In 5 weeks, this unstable genius who's talking about injecting disinfectant into you, experimenting with injecting disinfectant into somebody to kill coronavirus. In 5 weeks, he's wiped out all of the job gains in 10 years. And he's supposed to be the big businessman. He's supposed to make America great again. He's supposed to take the economy to places we've never seen before. He's actually doing that. We ain't never seen no stuff like this before. Okay. Now, what do you think would happen if President Obama lost 26 million jobs in 5 weeks? You know, can't no Negro lose 26 million jobs in 5 weeks and still have a job. You know, only a white man could get away with something like that. You know, can't no Negro lose 26 million jobs in 5 weeks and still have a job. This is an example of how elections have consequences, because a lot of African Americans are losing jobs and businesses behind this fiduciary malfeasance. This is what happens when you have somebody who ignores the scientists. This is what happens when you have somebody who doesn't want to hear bad news, doesn't want people to tell them the truth. This is what happens when you have poor leadership and people who make bad decisions. African Americans suffer because of this. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Now, on my show Sunday night, how's everybody doing on social media? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. We have Jan Lisa, Lori, Wise Warrior, Cosmically Made. On my show Sunday night, listen to my Sunday night show, the African History Network show. What I'm going to do is an update to the broadcast I did on March 10th. March 10th was, I think it was March 10th, when we had the primary here in the state of Michigan. And I did a broadcast comparing the policies of Bernie Sanders to the policies of Joe Biden and also Mike Bloomberg. Because you have people on social media saying, oh, Mike Bloomberg, he has a black agenda, so we should vote for Mike Bloomberg. Well, Mike Bloomberg dropped out of the race and endorsed Joe Biden. And since I did that broadcast March 10th, Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race, endorsed Joe Biden. Senator Elizabeth Warren dropped out of the race, endorsed Joe Biden. President Barack Obama has endorsed Joe Biden. So we're going to look at the policies of Joe Biden and how they benefit the African American community. A lot of people have not read his policies. If you haven't read them, then you should stay quiet. I've gone and read them, as well as Bernie Sanders, as well as Mike Bloomberg, as well as Buttigieg, as well as Elizabeth Warren. So we're going to break this down on my Sunday night show, the African History Network show, which is on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF here in Detroit. And then we also broadcast on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Okay, so we'll deal with that. And we'll also deal with understanding principles of political self-defense. We'll deal with political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. So when we look at any of these candidates, whether it's president, mayor, city council, what have you, it's not just about what someone can do for you. It's also understanding how to block things that people are trying to do to you. And oftentimes this gets left out. Because if we understood political self-defense in 2016, we will understand how to protect gains that were made under the 8 years of President Obama, and understand Trump as a threat trying to reverse those gains. But how do you protect gains that were made if you're under the misconception that no gains were made? So right now, Donald Trump's Department of Justice, his Attorney General, is in court trying to repeal the entire Affordable Health Care Act and kick at least 20 million people off of health care. Well, the Affordable Health Care Act gave health care to 3 million non-elderly African Americans who did not already have health care. The Affordable Health Care Act gave health care to 3 million non-elderly African Americans who did not already have health care. What this did was also, this extended the life expectancy for African Americans to the highest point basically in history, about 72 and a half years. There are less African Americans today who have health care because of attacks on the Affordable Health Care Act. When we look at COVID-19 and how this has exposed disparity in healthcare and poverty and things like this in the African American community, because it's a respiratory illness, a respiratory disease, on MSNBC on Thursday, and I have to find this clip, one of the things they talked about was how air pollution and poor quality air is attacking African Americans and making them, and because of asthma, bronchitis, things like this, is making us more susceptible to COVID-19. Because we know, because of environmental racism in African American communities, you're likely to have more pollution, more illegal dumping, more exposure to chemicals, more plants, things like this. What a lot of people don't know is that over the past 3 years, you've had a deterioration in the quality of air across America. That is directly tied to 95 environmental regulations that the Trump administration has either weakened or entirely rolled back. These were regulations that were put in place by the Obama administration or kept in place by the Obama administration that the Trump administration has attacked. Now, the regulations don't say Black or African American, but they impact African Americans. The deterioration in the quality of air, it doesn't say Black air, but it impacts African Americans. If you look at the September 2019 census report, because there's an annual census report that comes out every year, every 10 years. There's an annual census report that comes out every 10 years. But there is there's a census report that comes out every 10 years. So right now we're in the process of conducting the census. But there's an annual census report that comes out every September. The annual census report deals with income and poverty. And when you read the annual census report, it talks about the deterioration in the quality of air and how this is tied to environmental regulations. So on a number of different levels, these threats coming towards us, we didn't see. So this is something I'm going to break down on my Sunday night show. Okay, so you don't want to miss that. All right, because there's a whole lot of people talking, and this information that I'm going to share with you on my Sunday night show, most of them are not sharing it because most of them don't know it. Why? Because they haven't done the research. Okay, there's a huge article from New York Times. I'm going to give you this, and then we're going to continue here because I don't want this to be a 3-hour broadcast because I have a lot of other things to do. Jan Lisa, okay, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Jan Lisa, Lori, Wise Warrior, Let me see if I can pull this one up here from New York Times. Well, all across the board, these policies impact us. The policy does not have to say Black or African American to benefit you or to harm you. And so I'm somebody who studies policy. Okay, one of the reasons why I study policy is because I've been involved in writing public policy for the city of Detroit. So that gave me a better understanding of policy and how policy impacts us. Let me see here. Let me try to pull this up. I think this was New York Times. Let me see here. No, that's not it. Okay, well. Okay, we'll pull this. Oh, I think this is it right here. 95 environmental rules being rolled back under Trump. This was last updated December 21st, 2019. This is from New York Times. 95 environmental rules being rolled back under Trump. Okay, everything dealing with air pollution. There have been 58 rollbacks, 37 rollbacks in process. Okay, we'll post this link here on the thread of the broadcast. Go read this. Now, these don't say Black or African American, but they impact the air that we breathe and the quality of the air that we breathe, which impacts your health. And when you don't have health insurance, environmental racism becomes more prevalent, becomes more exposed. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics impacts every aspect of our life, from the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat. Okay, let's continue here. So let's go back to this article from Washington Post from April 23rd, 2020. 4.4 million Americans sought jobless benefits last week as economic pain continued across the United States. Also, everybody read this here, because I had it here, I meant to tell you. This is at whitehouse.gov, progress of the African-American community during the Obama administration, progress of the African-American community during the Obama administration. You've heard me talk about this before. Very few people talk about this because they don't know it exists. This is at whitehouse.gov. What this does is breaks down by category how the policies President Barack Obama were beneficial to African Americans. Most of these policies have either been reversed or severely under attack by the Trump administration. This was up during, I knew about it in I think I first probably heard about it in 2014, okay? If we knew about this on election day in 2016, Trump would not be president right now. Because when Donald Trump asked us, what the hell do we have to lose? We would have said everything, and we would have been able to go down and break this down. But because we don't understand, many of us don't understand this and don't do research, we didn't know it. So now these have either been severely reversed, weakened, or under attack. Okay, so the new weekly total comes on top of 22 million Americans who had sought benefits in previous weeks, a volume that has overwhelmed state systems for processing unemployment claims. So you still have state systems that are crashing because so many people are applying for unemployment. Economists estimate the national unemployment rate sits between 15 and 20%, much higher than it was during the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009. The unemployment rate at the peak of the Great Depression was about 25%. Now, once again, a few weeks ago, CNBC.com estimated that 47 million people were going to end up filing for unemployment. I think they said probably by June. We're at 26 million now, okay? And you still have millions more who have not been able to file for unemployment because the website keeps crashing, or they may not have access to the internet. And I see stories like on MSNBC where people are calling on the phone, calling the unemployment office, the state unemployment office, and they call dozens of times and can't get through. So there are millions more who are unemployed but haven't been able to file for unemployment. What we're seeing in the unemployment numbers that came out Thursday, August 23rd, is that this is also spreading to white collar workers, as there's a decrease in sales at various companies, as companies are reducing hours of retail stores, things like this, as there's less of a demand for certain products. We're seeing white collar workers now filing for unemployment. So economists estimate the national unemployment rate now sits between 15 and 20%. The peak of unemployment during the Great Depression, which starts in 1929 with the stock market crash in 1929, the peak of unemployment during the Great Depression was 25%. So the new weekly jobless claims figure came in around economists' predictions, which were expected to be staggering but not growing, which is a small mercy, said Julia Pollack, a labor economist at ZipRecruiter. For comparison, 5.2 million people filed unemployment claims for the week ending April 11th, so the previous week. 5.2 million filed the previous week. So it's a downward trend for now, but who knows, it could go up. Once these people who've already been unemployed for 2 or 3 weeks and haven't been able to file on the website and can't get through on the phone, once they can file, the next one, it could be higher than 4.4 million. So as the coronavirus began spreading in the United States early this year, many businesses rapidly began to close. Hotels, restaurants, and airlines were hit particularly hard, but few businesses were immune from the economic toll. The problems have only worsened each week as more Americans reduce their spending and more businesses cut workers because income has fallen sharply. Now, Julia Pollack, a labor economist at ZipRecruiter, said many businesses quickly cut to the bone. Many businesses quickly cut to the bone when they realized how the pandemic would gut sales. Now, many of the new layoffs stem from businesses like news organizations, media, news outlets, news organizations, and tech companies that were not directly affected by people staying home, but are suffering the consequences of vanishing ad revenue, advertising revenue, and paid subscriptions. A decline in ad revenue and paid subscriptions is causing white collar workers of these various companies to be laid off. So they're filing for unemployment. I mean, this is deep. Okay. Jay King, thanks for your Cash App donation. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. You can donate $the AHN show on Cash App, $the AHN show on Cash App, then also paypal.me/the AHN show through PayPal. Okay, that helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, upgrading equipment. I was able to buy a mixer, so now if you hear me better, you know, I got my old microphone. I was able to use this. I hooked it up. I bought a Behringer mixer from Micro Center, $220 mixer, 12-channel mixer. I'm trying to upgrade things, so thanks for the support. I really appreciate that. Okay, and you know, if you're in a situation now you can't donate, I totally understand. Okay, keep watching, keep sharing the information. If you can donate 5, 10, 15, 25, whatever it is, definitely appreciate that. Okay, but if you're in a situation where you can't, don't feel bad about it. Totally understand that. Okay, all right. And then also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. Okay. All right. And just a second here. Okay, let's continue here. So the problems have only worsened each week as Americans reduce their spending and more businesses cut workers because income has fallen so sharply. Now, Julia Pollack, who's a labor economist at ZipRecruiter, said many businesses quickly cut to the bone when they realized how the global pandemic would gut sales. Now, many of the new layoffs stem from businesses like news organizations and technology companies that were not directly affected by people staying home, but are suffering the consequences of vanishing advertising revenue and paid subscriptions. She said, quote, "We see declines across every major industry and state, although the declines hit industries at different times." So this is having wide-ranging impact all across the country in industries across the country. So meanwhile, consumer spending, the engine behind the longest economic expansion in US history, has evaporated consumer spending. So shortly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get to Donald Trump's quote unquote immigration ban for 60 days, pausing immigration for 60 days. This is a red herring. This is a distraction because he's looking for a scapegoat. Consumer spending is basically evaporated, largely evaporated. He can't run on the great economy. It don't exist. You can't brag about a great economy and 26 million people are unemployed, and there's going to be millions more who are going to file for unemployment. So what he's going to try to do, what he's trying to do now, and then he tried to blame the World Health Organization, but then he got exposed in the media once again because Washington Post came out with the article. Is this the one? They came out with the article dealing with how people at the World Health Organization were giving updates to the Trump administration and totally contradicting the lies that he was telling. Let me see, where's that article here? I have it here. That deals with Spanish flu. Be sure to watch the my Sunday night show. Be sure to watch the show from April 19th, the April 19th edition of the African History Network show, because I dealt with also the second wave of the Spanish flu, 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, and why it was worse than the first wave. Okay, let me see. Let's go back and let's look at this here. There's one. I thought I printed this up from dealing with the World Health Organization, because he said he was going to cut off funding to the World Health Organization, and then he got exposed in another lie. Let me see here. I thought I had that printed up. Just a second here. These are all articles that I've printed. And that one was just from this past week. Okay, I had to print that one up. I thought I printed it. Well, we'll find that one. I'll find that one for you. I'll post it. We'll put it in the notes of the broadcast. Let's see here. I have about 50 tabs open. Okay, that's about him suspending immigration. All right, I'll find that one. All right, let's continue here. Let's go back to this main article. Okay, so the White House and Congress have tried to intervene, but with limited impact so far. New funding for small businesses in a $2 trillion March emergency spending package quickly dried up in the face of overwhelming demand, prompting the Senate to expand funding by $310 billion on Tuesday, passed by the U.S. House of Representatives on Thursday, April 23rd. It's a total of $484 billion bill, $310 billion for small businesses, $60 billion set aside for basically women and minority-owned businesses, and their term minority, not mine. and sending that $60 billion to like small banks and credit unions, et cetera. Okay. So the bill would direct an additional $60 billion to a separate small business emergency grant and loan program. The House approved the measure 388-5 on Thursday afternoon, April 23rd. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of Brooklyn, her district is in Brooklyn, or at least partly Brooklyn. She voted against it. She said it wasn't enough for her district, et cetera. Okay, whatever. Even with all the new government spending, hopes for a sharp economic rebound are fading, overtaken by the public fear of going back to restaurants, movie theaters, schools, and gyms. Okay, we see Governor Brian Kemp, dumbass Brian Kemp of Georgia, is opening up hair salons and barbershops and things like this, gyms, etc. in Georgia. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, African-American female mayor of Atlanta, she's telling people stay home. Don't listen to this fool. Because a lot of these Republican governors trying to open back up the economy so quickly, they're going to end up getting a lot of people killed. A lot of people are going to catch coronavirus, and some of them are going to die. Listen to these dumbasses. And now what's interesting at the White House coronavirus press conference on Thursday, April 23rd, dumbass Donald Trump, even though he's talking about injecting disinfectant, experimenting with injecting disinfectant into people to kill coronavirus, because it'll kill it, because like Lysol or bleach will kill coronavirus on surfaces. But the doctors are sitting there looking at this idiot like, no, you can't inject this into the human body under no circumstances. Okay. But even Donald Trump disagreed with Governor Brian Kemp of opening back up the economy and opening back up these businesses at this point in time. Because one of the guidelines of one of the stipulations of the guidelines coming from the White House for opening back up the economy, which Trump did not shut down, by the way, okay, is you have to have 14 consecutive days of declining cases of coronavirus. Georgia doesn't have that. These other Republican states that are opening up, they don't have that. And they're going to end up getting a lot of people killed. Listen to their dumbasses, okay? So this is an example of how elections have consequences, and I guarantee you, if Stacey Abrams had become governor of the great state of Georgia, she would not do something stupid like this. She would exercise more judgment, she would be more responsible, and she would save more people's lives. I guarantee you, Stacey Abrams was the governor. I guarantee you, if Andrew Gilliam had become governor of the state of Florida, he would exercise better judgment, he would save more lives, he would not do stupid things like Governor Ron DeSantis is doing. I guarantee you, he would have shut down businesses earlier, he would have shut down the beaches, he wouldn't play these games. This is an example of how elections have consequences. This is understanding political self-defense. Okay, let's continue here. So, even with all the new government spending, hopes for a sharp rebound are fading, overtaken by the public fear of going back to restaurants, movie theaters, schools, and gyms. The growing possibility of a W-shaped recovery in which a resurgence of the virus or a spike in defaults and bankruptcies triggers another downturn in the economy has analysts reframing what a reopened or rehabilitated economy might look like. The worst is yet to come. The impact on the economy, the worst is probably yet to come. So this year defies historical comparison. In the year 2020, 28 million people have filed for unemployment benefits, halfway through the fourth month of the year. The figure has already eclipsed the full year totals of every year except 1982, when 30.4 million people filed for unemployment. And then the year 2009, when 29.8 million people filed for unemployment. This right here, this will probably eclipse that in week 6, because you're already at 26 million, 26.5 million right now. We'll probably eclipse that in week 6 under the unstable genius, under the big businessman who's supposed to make America great again and bring back all the industries. And we're gonna take the economy to heights you've never seen before. So at this rate, it will overtake both within a week or so. So less than half of working age Americans will be earning a wage next month, said James Knightley, who's an economist with ING. He's a chief international economist with ING. He said less than half of working age Americans will be earning a wage next month. We know, based upon the reporting from that I did on my Sunday, April 19th show, the African History Network show, we know that 10% of people in Michigan have filed for unemployment. There are 10 million people in Michigan. 10% of the population is unemployed. This is, I forgot what percentage of working age. I can't remember if it's like 1 out of 4 working age people in Michigan or something. 10 million people in Michigan, 10% unemployed. In 1 week, 385,000 filed for unemployment. And the website keeps crashing in Michigan. Wait till they can actually get through and file for unemployment. Some of these people voted for Donald Trump. So James Knightley said, in an election year, this means that the call for politicians to reopen the economy is only going to get louder, irrespective of the health advice. Donald Trump yesterday in the press conference is trying to say maybe coronavirus won't come back in the winter. Dr. Anthony Fauci said we will have coronavirus in the winter. It's not going to disappear. Usually with viruses, usually in the summer when you have higher temperatures, usually the virus, the reported cases of the virus, the activity of it dies down. Then it comes back in the winter, and it can mutate and come back harder in the winter. This is what happened with the Spanish flu, the great pandemic of 1918. That second wave came, the virus mutated, and that second wave came back even harder. Donald Trump has no clue what he's talking about. He's trying to sell happy talk because he can't run on the great economy. He can't run on the stock market. So what he's trying to run on now is happy talk. In 5 weeks, 9.4% of the working age population has filed for unemployment insurance, said Nick Bunker, Bunker, who is Director of Economic Research at Indeed Hiring Labs. That's about twice the share of the population that lost a job during the Great Recession. That's about twice the share of the population that lost a job during the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. In some states, such as the state of Michigan, where I am, about 1 in 4 workers has filed an unemployment claim in the past few weeks. So Nick Bunker said, the numbers detailing the shock to the US labor market are so large and cover such a short period of time, that your first reaction is that this is a typo, but it's not. Some people may think it's a dream, but it's not. Trump is a nightmare, but this is not a dream. This is reality. So as part of its sprawling stimulus package, Washington, D.C. has rolled out relief for millions of households and small businesses struggling to make ends meet. But money for struggling businesses quickly ran dry, and system glitches have prevented $1,200 stimulus checks from reaching some of the neediest people. So Washington Post has an additional article here. We'll pull this up. You have some stimulus checks going to dead people. You have delays and some people getting stimulus checks, you know, so 80 million checks have gone out. All of them haven't reached the intended target. And if you go back and listen to our broadcast, going up to this, leading up to the first check going out, I said, you know, the projections that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is giving out about when people are going to get checked up, I said, that's really aggressive. On Tuesday, the Senate said the 20th, I think April 20th. The U.S. Senate passed a bill to expand the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses by $310 billion and flood a separate small business emergency grant and loan initiative by an additional $60 billion. Meanwhile, many low-income veterans and Social Security recipients still have not received the stimulus money in their bank accounts. Many of them are African-American. Talk about how elections have consequences. All this impacts us. Unfortunately, many people don't understand how this impacts us. How many Black people you know on Social Security who are waiting for their $1,200 stimulus check? How many people you know who are veterans, served in the military? We know Trump ain't one of them. Nobody in his family has ever served in the military. But how many people you know who are veterans who are waiting for the stimulus check? My dad. So this impacts African Americans, even though this don't say Black stimulus check. This don't say Social Security. Okay, how's everybody doing on YouTube? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. If you have a question, you can post your question. Here also. So you see this computer's freezing up. Luckily, I have this article printed out. So in some states, as Michigan, about 1 in 4 workers have filed an unemployment claim in the past 4 weeks. Remember, Michigan is a swing state. I mean, Michigan is a battleground state. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those people are going to remember this come election day. They're going to remember how they got screwed by Trump come election day, many of them. Okay. So employers are also unlikely to be hiring at the same levels they were hiring before the pandemic. As of April 16th, job postings on Indeed.com, this recruiting website, Indeed.com. As of April 16th, job postings on Indeed.com were down 34% compared to last year, Nick Bunker said. The job losses, like the epidemic itself, have not fallen evenly across the country. In 3 states, Hawaii, Kentucky, about 1 workers have filed for unemployment benefits in the past 5 weeks. Hawaii, Kentucky, and Michigan. Okay, we see it here. I see it here in the state of Michigan. I see it here in Detroit. In Michigan, plant shutdowns and furloughs have ravaged the manufacturing economy, which had only recently recovered all the jobs it lost in the Great Recession. On the opposite side of the ledger sits South Dakota, the state of South Dakota, where Republican Governor Kristi L. Noem, N-O-E-M, has resisted calls to lock down the state's businesses to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Only 6% of the state's labor force has applied for unemployment benefits. It may be a regional trend. Neighboring states, Wyoming, and usually low claims of unemployment claim numbers. So U.S. markets flash. Okay, so let's see. So as part of its sprawling stimulus package, Washington has rolled out relief for millions of households and small businesses struggling to make ends meet. But money for the struggling businesses quickly ran dry, and system glitches have prevented $1,200 stimulus checks from reaching some of the neediest people who need it. So many low-income veterans and Social Security recipients still have not received the stimulus money in their bank accounts, while other IRS checks are going to dead people. Washington Post, New York Times, NBC News, there are articles dealing with this. Okay, stimulus checks going to dead people. So people who did not file tax returns last year or don't have direct deposit information may have weeks more to wait. Go to irs.gov/coronavirus. They have information there for you to update your direct deposit information or how you want to receive your check. irs.gov/coronavirus. So in the wake of the Great Recession, the number of unemployed, about 15 million, was significantly higher than the number who claimed benefits, and the unemployment rate still peaked at just 10% during the Great Recession. Economists expect the United States to blow by that